I'm grateful for being here again. Especially I'm grateful to Allama Iqbal for inviting me and other people from our center to take part in this seminar. And I'm extra grateful to be here with the director of the Iqbal Academy in Lahore, Dr. Sohail Umar. I'm sitting next to him. We met in Lahore 2 years ago. We were supposed to have our meeting at the academy, but we were forced to move to the hotel because there was a bomb threat to another place which is very close to the academy. But today we are here, and unfortunately the situation in Pakistan has not improved so much since that time. The question for me was how to approach this theme today, kinship in thought between Islam and the West. Islam and the West, a religion and a concept of a geographical area, as some say a civilization, they do not seem to be comparable entities. They are not two static or separate entities, because today we move between different countries, different parts of the world. We influence each other, we mix with each other, we marry each other, and so on. So they are not separate entities. And what do we mean by thought, kinship in thought? Are we thinking about ethics, intellectual vision, worldviews, values in relation to globalization, etc.? If we are talking about Islam and Christianity, of course there are many things that we could mention that where we are related to each other in our thoughts. There were, especially when I saw the theme, two things that came to my mind, which are of extreme importance today in the world we live in. So I will keep to these two things. They are related to each other, and I think that both of us have lost them, and we have to regain them or to recapture them. The first thing is that both our religions are ethical religions. The human-divine relationship is defined in ethical terms. The message of Islam, the message of Christianity, is not just words, but it's also a creative event which demands obedience, obedient participation. Faith and action are intimately related in these two religions. That becomes clear in the 5 pillars in the concept of Sharia, which is a manifestation of faith and practice being interrelated, and also in the words and the life of Jesus. Human beings are created by God with an ethical insight, the ability to distinguish between good and bad, to distinguish between what God wants from us and what God does not want from us. This was the first thing that came to my mind. The other thing is that we have a holistic approach to life, at least originally in history. There's not only an interplay between or an internal logic of theology and ethics, but we also have a very comprehensive approach to life, to nature, to the universe. And that becomes manifested in our theologies of creation. Life is a whole. Tawhid, equality, human dignity, and so on. Creation is a whole. And this integrity of creation must be upheld, because we have to protect our earth. Our nature is divine. Nature has an ethical significance in itself. It's not only there for our satisfaction. Human life is created by God in God's image, or in God's shape, we could say. There is a semblance to the Creator in each of us, and we have to reflect this ability, the abilities that God has in the absolute sense. I could talk about that for a long time, because I really believe that in Islam also there is this idea of human beings being created in the image of God. It's in the concept of Khalifa, for instance, that we are God's vice-gerents. We have to mirror, to reflect God's abilities. So human life is sacred, and therefore it is inviolable. It must be treated with care. It must be treated with responsibility. These are the two things I would mention, and I think they are very much in line with Allama Iqbal's thoughts about Tawhid as a concept of wholeness, of equality, solidarity, and freedom. And this concept must be realized. And only in this sense, Islam is a real theocracy. So there has to be a spiritual democracy established in the world, determined by spiritual force of a common ideal. So the kinship of thought is there. It's very clear when we are talking about Islam and Christianity. The kinship of ethics is there. But I think that we have lost, to some extent, our comprehensive, holistic approach, if we look at the world today. There has been a compartmentalization of theology and ethics. There are many examples of how religion, how Islam and Christianity has been, our ethics have been reduced in many ways. It has been reduced to laws and prescription. It has been reduced to what serves self-interests. It has been reduced to legitimization of violence, force of arm, especially in the West. And we have this circle of fear that has been developed, especially within the last decade. Therefore, many of the dynamic values that we hold in common have lost their meaning. Concepts have been abused. And here I'm thinking about, for instance, Sharia, jihad, freedom, liberal democracy, human rights, and so on. They have been abused and therefore lost their meanings, and sometimes even to the extent that they have become the opposite of what they were in reality and what they were meant to be. They become abused when they are not connected to humility, honesty, and empathy. love. And now the question is, how do we recapture this holistic, comprehensive view, approach to life, and our religions to have an integrated view of theology and ethics? That is a challenge for both of us, for all of us. How do we come to reaffirm what is human? How do we regain our common ethical principles, our kinship of thought, in thought? This is my question. I do not have the answer. I don't think any of us has, but I will process to further reflection. Thank you.
Well, asking the right questions are halfway through to getting the right answers. So you're halfway through there. Thank you. With a master's degree in computer science from the Oxford University in UK, he's presently working as a program manager at Microsoft. He's an active member of the Executive Board of the Iqbal Academy in Scandinavia. As a great contrast to his professional work, he has an active interest in philosophy, religion, and current social issues. Please welcome Soroush Alingir.
Islam and the West, as Dr. Rasmussen mentioned, are rather strange topic, is it not? Islam is the name of a religion, a matter of faith, and West is a geographic distinction. It's not even like comparing apples with oranges, like, I don't know, apples with baskets. But no, thinking of it carefully, Islam is not just the name of mere faith or a personal relation with God. It is more like a character guided by what is believed to be a universal holistic outlook. It's animated by an objective ideology regulated through a certain legal framework. In short, Islam is a way of life aiming for higher objectives. West, very similarly, is not just the name of the region or distinction of geography. It is, when we talk about West in this manner, it certainly has, despite all the diversity that it incorporates, it is characterized by certain trends. It is characterized by certain traits, certain political, religious, and cultural ideologies. So in this particular context that we're talking here, West represents a set of certain ideologies, certain legacies, certain ideals, and certain values. So contrasting the two systems, which are no doubt they're not mutually exclusive at all, there is a myriad of different aspects which crave the dialogue and discussion. There are shared ideals and also the dimensions that where further consolidation is most desirable. So since it's not possible to cover all these or even one of these in the available time, I shall highlight only a couple of points on the kinship we share, mainly from the ideological perspective. And also emphasizing the fact that the topic, the subject today, is Islam and the West, not the dialogue between the West and the Muslim world, often confused together to promote certain interests. We're frequently trying to religiousize the global political issues, among other things. Islam and the West addresses more foundational, fundamental issues than those addressed by the dialogue between West and the Muslim world. So, speaking of the West and the Muslim world, which is, as I mentioned, is not the topic today, but it certainly provides a good point of departure. They say the clash of civilizations, not to me. Deducting certain political and state elements, to me it is more like a clash of ignorance, fundamentally and largely through and through, at both ends. Looking at the history, I do not see a clash when I look at the golden chain from Al-Khwarizmi to Al-Kindi to Omar Khayyam to Fibonacci to Newton to John Newman. What I see is a continuum. I do not see a clash when I look at Jabir ibn Hayyan to Roger Bacon. I do not see a clash when I look at Razi to Biruni to Einstein. From Idrisi to P. Race to Mercator to Harvey. What I see is a beautiful spectrum spread between Avicenna to Ibn al-Haytham to Agrigenov to William Harvey. I see a spectrum of modern discoveries. I see is the continuum of scientific and technological advancements. But the question is this chain of connected achievements all that important at all? Does this view into the kinship of the two paradigms not look a bit too shallow and a bit too narrow? Yes, indeed. This is not it that is important here. It is the fiber, the shared fiber that underlies these shared discoveries and shared advancements that is important. Let me explain. If we have to name the defining characteristics of the West today, the heightened sense of action and movement and objectivity on one hand, and a sense of freedom on the other hand, on the top ones. These two shared ideologies and shared values also constitute the main focus of my talk today. The former, the sense of action, movement, and objectivity, relating to the earlier propositions that I made. So it is, if not largely, then to a great extent, the empirical attitude of the West that has distinguished it from the rest of the world in the recent history, and also being the main factor of its technological or scientific advancement and progress. On the other hand, when we look at Islam, Quran turns this sense of action, this notion, into a golden rule. لَيْسَ الْإِنسَانَ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. For man is only that for which he strives. Then, at different places, it goes on and on, giving action the key importance along with ideology. Then, it further goes on to inspire man to study the world surrounding him. It speaks of the oceans and mountains and their formation. It speaks of the unicellulars and mammals and the process of reproduction. It talks about the orbits and planetary motion. It talks about the clay and water being the origin of life. It talks about evolution. It talks about making of clouds and rain. And then it says that all these are signs from God, but only for the ones who are thoughtful, who ponder and reflect into this universe. Islam exhorts its followers to not only act in accordance with the higher ideals, but also to ponder and to reflect and contemplate in the universe and the various sciences. And then it also says that it's not only required, but only the ones who do can truly appreciate the objectivity and the grandness of God's plans and His creations. And also that all this has been subjected to us, the humans. So, it was not a coincidence, but this inspiration and this empirical attitude of Quran that the earlier Muslims took with great respect and great reverence and with great responsibility, and went on to be the founders of virtually every modern science known to man. It continued till it was here in Europe that West shrugged off their intellectual stagnation and took over, stepped forward and took over the responsibility, this noble responsibility, and with great dedication, with great sincerity, and took it to new heights. What I see is a continuum. What I see is a shared character between the values of the West and the values in Islam. I shall try to close with a brief mention of the other defining characteristic of the West today as well that we mentioned. It's freedom. Although the true semantics and the dynamics of freedom probably make a very good point of discourse between West and Islam, but just keeping the topic to the intended